Hey there, this is Tara from Wild Bird Farm. I grow here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. Today is a follow-up to some summer seed starting that I did just over a month ago. I will be planting out pearl yarrow as well as some feverfew. I will put a link to the seed starting video down in the notes as well as a card at the end of this video. So if you want to see the prior related video, go ahead and pause and watch that first. Now, as a quick recap, I started these seeds indoors under lights. They've been going about 5 weeks now. Both of these grow relatively quickly. I noticed when I put them outside the last week or so to harden off, they really put on some growth. So it is time to get these in the ground. As I mentioned, these have been outdoors hardening off in both the wind and getting acclimated to the sunlight for about a week now, and that's really important with most any sort of seedling. I had an absolutely gorgeous morning for this. It was in the low 60s and sunny as we pan past the buckwheat. That row that looks slightly disturbed over there is where we will be putting the feverfew. This row that we're headed over to is already filled about halfway, about 12 feet out of the 25-foot row with tetra white currently. I came in here in the spring and planted some young starts and they didn't do very well. Some have died off. I'm not sure if it was leaf hoppers that got to them, but I didn't have great feverfew this year. So I'm going to fill in some holes in this row as well as fill in the 25-foot length. Also notice here I do some companion planting in this row. So these are lilies that come back each year in my zone 5 that I plant along the edge of this row. And so far, those two plants in companion planting have worked out well. Here's a few lupin plants that jumped over from the row just to the west. So I'm going to attempt to dig those up and move those over. Although lupin don't love their roots to be disturbed, so I'm not sure how successful I'll be. But this is the flat of feverfew that I am going to get planting. A lot of it is tetra white. There may be a couple other varieties thrown in here. I will also be getting a full flat delivered later this fall of the Vegmo single, and those will go in a different row. I made sure these feverfew plugs were well watered before I started planting them. I am just using a trowel to dig a small hole to pop them into. While we've had a lot of rain this season, in the last month we really haven't. So our ground is quite dry. You can see in the background there I've snaked my hose all the way out here because I will definitely want to give these little seedlings a good watering when I'm done. After a good watering, here it is, a quick walk down the row. You can see a few holes here where I snuck in plants, probably about 5 or 6 that kind of filled gaps. But then the rest, I believe I had somehow exactly 30 here. I did rows of 3. They're probably about 6 by 6 inches apart. And then I do have probably a 4 or 5 foot area that I just pulled mulch back over, and I will come in the spring and finish putting some seedlings in that area. Next up is the pearl yarrow, and boy, if I can grow one thing from seed, it's yarrow. While I already have 2 25-foot rows here on the perennial slope and a pretty large patch that I planted this time last year out in the pollinator area, I don't have a lot of the pearl yarrow. So I decided that I would put just a few in here, maybe about 5 feet worth in the perennial rows, but most of these plugs are going to go around in my landscape bedding. So here we are up by the shop, and I think I put 7-ish kind of around this larger rock, and then some on the other side, right where Kitty's going to be walking, of the door. And then I went down this strip a little bit farther and added some more in just to sort of fill in this space because there were a lot of holes this season. And here we are down at the other end of this strip behind the coral bells. I added in some more plugs on the front side and the back side of this rock, and then a few more on the other side just to balance things out. I'm really hoping this area fills in next year. And then our final spot to add in the rest of this pearl yarrow is down in the secret garden on the strip that I added last year, except for the bushes. They've been there a few years. And again, I just came through and added small groupings of the pearl yarrow throughout. My hose did not reach all the way down here today, so I have my watering can just to water everything in well. That wraps up this video. I will be sure to keep these plugs moist throughout next week. Now we have 2 or 3 more days of nice 70-degree weather, and then it's going to jump back up in the 80s. So I will want to make sure to give them a good dose of water to give them a good start. And again, we're just about 6 weeks out from our first frost, which is the perfect time to get seedlings planted that are hardy for your zone, so you have a head start for next growing season. Until next time, everyone, happy gardening.